Welcome to episode 19 of Off the Fields. Glad to have you guys joining us. We have a lot to recap from over the weekend at the national championship game. This was the first time Off the Fields made its debut on a national platform. So, yay! How exciting. Paris will be joining us here shortly. We have a lot to recap. There's a lot of moving parts going on right now. Nick Saban retiring. Where is Jim Harbaugh going? Where is he going to go? Which NFL team is he going to choose? He's really a diehard Michigan fan, right? Like, it's not even about him being a fan. It's his alma mater, right? It's a family tradition. So is he really... here goes Paris. Let's get Paris in here. Okay, here we go.
Hey.
There is Paris. So I was just saying that, big shout out and big congratulations to Off the Field for making its debut at the national championship for its first time on a national stage. And what we were just talking about is, Nick Saban retiring. There's a lot of moving parts going on right now from over the weekend.
Right.
So there's a lot to recap. But yeah, Nick Saban retiring, of course. Obviously, we already heard the news about who's going to fill his shoes potentially, which is very interesting. Uh, we just saw that head coach in person, and I mean, he just made it to the championship for the first time. So he has some really big shoes to fill. Um, so yeah, anyways, next, what we would be talking about is with Jim Harbaugh, right? Where is he going to go when it comes to the NFL? Is it really time for him to leave his alma mater? I mean, Michigan is something that he holds near and dear to his heart, right? Um, and so it being a family tradition, long tradition there, is he really going to leave Michigan and go to the NFL? Next, what we'll also be talking about is, well, obviously FSU has been penalized by the NCAA. And at the same time, the investigation is still ongoing for Michigan with the NCAA. And it's just pretty crazy how FSU has already been sanctioned and their penalties have been listed as opposed to what's going on with Michigan, right? I mean, they're national champs. You have the NCAA, the president of the NCAA saying they won fair and square. We can get into that. Not necessarily everybody agrees with that statement, but that's what it appears to be. And also what we're going to be talking about is the ESPN fake name scam, right? Why did ESPN feel the need to submit fake names? They were double dipping. They broke a rule in order for their talent, their on-air talent, to win Emmys. I mean, we know that in production, right? When there's a show and you are nominated for an award, or the show gets an award, that award goes to the producers, the people who are behind the scenes who make the show happen. And so for them to double dip, to change the names of their on-air talent just in order for them to win an Emmy, that's pretty extreme, and they should be held accountable, which is why they're so apologetic, and they have been all day, according to sources. But let's dig right in. So when it comes to Nick Saban retiring, right? He's 72 years old. Okay, his birthday is the day after mine, which is interesting. He's a Scorpio, but Nick Saban is 72 years old. I mean, obviously, he's unmatched. Nobody's been able to do what he's done. Paris told me, I mean, you said the closest coach maybe to being able to do what he did was Urban Meyer, but he shot himself in the foot with all of the opportunities and the things that could have come with that. So, I mean, let's just break down Nick Saban really quick. 7-time national champion head coach. Okay, he announced his retirement on Wednesday. He spent the last 17 years coaching at Alabama and won 6 national titles, right? So 6 national titles during that time. He also is tied with Paul Bear Bryant, right? And so for the most national titles in Alabama history. And then also he had the championship with LSU in 2003. And it's just crazy because Nick Saban, I mean, his impact on the field and off the field is very big, and it's really crazy to see who's going to fill his shoes and who they've chosen already. But what people don't know is that Nick Saban coached at Ohio State along with Pete Carroll. These are two big coaches who are in transition right now, actually. So Nick Saban basically coached in the early 80s at Ohio State. And he was under Coach Earl Bruce. And during that time, he was just a defensive back coach, which is interesting. He didn't last too long as a Buckeye, but him and Pete Carroll actually coached at Ohio State very briefly early on in their careers. Ohio State has always been a prestigious football program. So initially, that is where a lot of coaches started off at back in that time. But I don't think many people knew that. I mean, just finding that out myself recently was very surprising, but it just lets you know that he's had that much experience as a coach, right? Paris, what are your thoughts on Coach Nick Saban?
Um, well, I mean, again, the man's 70 years old, so and he started in an era where, I mean, you today it's quite nearly impossible to coach a program when you're 20, 21 years old. But again, he has, his oldest football students, I'm sure, are probably at least 60 years old. Um, you know, so he's been coaching for a very long time. Again, his resume speaks for himself. He has national titles, just six with Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty huge. But to be expected, when you are a coach of that caliber and you've been coaching for that long. Again, as I said before, I think Urban Meyer could have been close uh, had he had better outcomes with what had transpired with
Better
him
decision
and his
making.
time.
Yes.
Yes, with him and his time at Ohio State. And I just said that because, I mean, Urban Meyer is young, when he had three national titles, I mean, he was just getting the ball rolling. So you could only imagine how many more Ohio State could have had with Urban Meyer. But again, speaking of Saban, he's a legend within himself, and I'm not sure if we would ever see anyone in our lifetime succeed in the way he did. But also, too, I think that it's also important to note that college football is transitioning into a very different era. You might not see back-to-back champions with this 12-team playoff field. Um,
Yeah.
and it might be a long time until we see that.
Mm-hmm.
But again, college football is always changing. So, years to come, it might not even be, under the NCAA, which is something that many coaches are trying to push for. So
Yeah.
again, I mean, just speaking of Nick Saban, he's a legend within himself, and I find the new hiring a little bit interesting. Um,
Very.
I'm a little, honestly, I am shocked by the hire, but it will be interesting to see how well he does do with Alabama in the years to come.
Yeah. So, like with Nick Saban, I mean, in 1980, he replaced Pete Carroll as Ohio State's secondary coach. Okay, so Pete Carroll was also, well, what's slightly different between him and Nick Saban is that Pete Carroll was fired, right? Seattle Seahawks head coach Pete Carroll was fired earlier this week. He's going to remain with the franchise as, some unspecified advisory role. And he's going to continue his coaching career somehow, but he won't be the head coach of the Seattle Seahawks anymore. A lot of changes going on when it comes to coaching in football right now, in college and in the NFL, right? There's like this crossover that's happening right now. And it's coming from some of the greatest coaches, right? But when we look at Nick Saban and the history and some of the schools that he's coached at, I mean, we're talking, you told me Toledo, okay, Michigan State, LSU, Ohio State. And I mean, the thing is this, he's impacted so many players, right? He's produced so many first round draft picks in college football, right? And so now he told he basically said that this last year it was grueling for him, right? With all the changes happening with the portal, with the NIL, it was a lot, okay? And it's just so different from what he's used to in the previous years. Now, football is continuously changing. All the rules, all the policies, all the regulations, all of that has changed through his era, obviously. But this one was specifically different. Has a lot to do with the NIL stuff, has a lot to do with the transfer portal. And those are some of the key things that he had to be honest about. You have to understand when kids go to Alabama and they want to learn up under Nick Saban, they want to spend more than 1 year with him. Okay. They want to spend at least 3 to 5 years if they can. If they're not developing the way that they see or anything like that, they want to get as much as they can out of him. And he's at that age where he just can't make that promise anymore. He has to be realistic with himself, no matter how much he loves football, and how passionate he is about the kids and teaching them. And, it comes down to his health as well. He's 72 years old. And I'm sure you've seen some of the footage that all the networks have been playing back to some of his glory coaching days. But this last season was just very different. Okay. But what this does mean for Nick Saban, I mean, he's produced 44 first round NFL draft picks. Okay. That's a lot of first round draft picks under one coach. Okay. Who's stuck with like the same program forever. And a lot of, I would say, fans, diehard Alabama, Roll Tide fans, don't really know how to process this, but they shouldn't be surprised. I mean, at what point do you think he was gonna just keep coaching, like coaching himself into the grave? I mean, this is a good time for him to go ahead and let somebody else who is younger go ahead and take over the program, because I think, of course, he's gonna have still some type of say so um, with the program, but what we have to really be truthful about and question is who they have chosen to replace him. Okay. Washington's head coach, um, Washington Huskies head coach who just lost in the national championship. So, not saying that they were going to get a coach who was a winner. Okay. But he's a younger coach. His record is okay. I just think this is going to be a really big job for him to fill. You're talking Alabama. I mean, this is a team that's always had an explosive offensive line, um, somewhat unstoppable. Okay. Um, and he's coming from the Pac 12. Paris, didn't you say that he wasn't all of that in a bag of chips when it comes to being in the Pac 12? And then just to throw him into the
Well,
SEC?
well, being in the Pac-12, he was actually really good. Washington was good in the Pac-12, but I think it's just more so the Pac-12 isn't as competitive to other conferences like the SEC. So I think it's not that he wasn't good at Washington, because he did win the Pac-12 championships this year. He did win the Sugar Bowl, and he made it all the way to the national championship game. Additionally, he's also the two-time Pac-12 head coach of the year this year and last year, and he is this year's AP, and he actually snagged all the head coaching of the year awards this season. But I just think that in terms of the caliber of competition outside of the Pac-12, I think that is maybe what's a little bit more questionable, is that competing against the teams this season in the Pac-12 it's different than competing in the SEC. And I think that he's gonna potentially realize that when he goes there. Um, additionally, he does have an amazing all-time record, coaching record. He's 102-12. So he's won 102 games. He's only lost 12. He's 12-2 when it comes to ranked opponents. So he does have the resume numbers to succeed and lead Alabama. I just think what's going to be a big taste of reality is how is it going to play out on the field. We all know that things look different on paper as they do in person. You can draw an image on paper. You can draw your ideal person on paper, but when it comes to bringing it to life, that's what's going to change, and I think that's what we're going to see. No matter really, no one can replace Nick Saban, but you got to find a replacement. So I think more so they're not looking to replace Nick Saban with the Nick Saban. They're just really looking to fill in the position with someone who could potentially lead the team with the expansion coming, with the divisions in the SEC no longer existing, and you really don't have many people to choose from. I mean, when you think of the coaches, he beat Texas coach. People try to say Steve Sarkisian, was a good option, but he beat Texas twice, this year in the Sugar Bowl and last year in the Alamo Bowl. So, why would you pick and I don't mean to call Steve Sarkisian a losing coach, but in this situation, why would you choose a losing coach over a winning coach?
Right.
The only coach he lost to was Jim Harbaugh, and they weren't offering Jim Harbaugh the position. So,
Mm-hmm.
well, when you think about who else is gonna get the position today, Dan Lanning, he made a statement saying he's staying at Oregon, so he's knocked out the window. You had Florida State coach who signed an extension, so that lets you know that he was staying at Florida State. So you really didn't have many people to choose from. Um, and I mean, at this point, if he was willing to leave Washington, which I think what I was most shocked about, then I guess he's the guy. But it's just it's going to be an adjustment for everyone, because he was at the program for so long. That's like UConn basketball. Gino has been the coach at UConn for Jesus since my mom was like a little girl. Okay, I'm over exaggerating, but you get the picture. And
Yeah.
so to see him sit down one day, it's going to be huge because he has undoubtedly been the king of women's basketball and the king of coaching women's basketball for so long that to see him no longer in the game, it's going to be a huge adjustment. But the time's going to come, and Nick Saban, his time came.
Right. 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 And I think this will be, like I said, the NIL and the transfer portal, with all the changes happening with the football landscape, I think that was just, taking a toll on Nick Saban. Who wants to continue to deal with that going into next season? Okay. It's already like a lot of moving parts happening right now. And it was very difficult last year, so just it is time for him to let somebody else like Kalen DeBauer to go ahead and give this a shot with Alabama. Now fans are reacting in the sense of like, oh, get ready to like, have a losing streak, or, he's not going to be able to execute the way Saban did. But you really just can't compare him to Nick Saban right now. He's too he he's too young, honestly. When you look at his career and who he's developed as a coach, okay. But I wish we got the chance to ask him about Michael Penix Jr. because Michael Penix Jr. is someone that I think he helped develop him. Okay, I think that's like a key player that you should look at to see a top player who he's developed and who's made it thus far. But what's weird about that is that he kind of underperformed in the game, in the championship game. Okay, as far as the way he was throwing the ball. I mean, we talked about Michael Penix Jr. to the point where we thought that I called him a precision thrower. Okay. I thought that he was going to be, a pocket passer. I thought, a lot of the passes, a lot of the balls that he threw, he overthrew them. It was just completely off when we saw his performance at the championship game. So I still think he's a great player, but when it came to the championship game, it just didn't match up. It wasn't what we expected, honestly, when it comes to him. So I would like to know how he feels in that sense. I mean, as far as Michael Penix Jr., what do they think about their coach going to Alabama? You know what I'm saying? That's a pretty big job. But congratulations to him because that's going to better his career and better him as a coach, honestly. I think he's going to learn a lot from Nick Saban, obviously, who he's only going to get better as a coach.
Yeah,
So let's see where that takes him. But going from the Pac-12 to the SEC, that's a big jump.
a big job.
And yeah, different playing styles. Everything is going to be different, but it's going to be interesting to see. So I hope that I hope Roll Tide fans are nice. Okay, I hope they're not as hard on
Seem to
him.
be pretty happy about the hire now. I mean, again, it's gonna definitely play out differently next season, but I don't think we're gonna see as many undefeated teams, especially with the conference realignment that just happened.
Yeah, yeah, I can agree to that. So we'll see how he does. But in the meantime, I mean, Nick Saban, great coach. You got to give him his props. And honestly, you know, he's also, he said he coached for the Navy as
He
well.
coached for Navy, Toledo, Michigan State, Ohio State. He just coached for many. He won the MAC championship as a head coach with Toledo. So
Wow. I mean, that's crazy to know that he actually coached at Ohio State. But what happened at Ohio State, why he didn't last, is that he was fired. Um, he was fired after the 1981 season because he allowed 28 points to the Navy in the Liberty Bowl back then. So that's why he didn't last at Ohio State. And Pete Carroll, as far as Pete Carroll at Ohio State, he left Ohio State after the Rose Bowl and went on to become the defensive coordinator at North Carolina State. So that's what happened there. But it's just nice to know that they were also once Buckeyes, which is pretty interesting. Not many people know that, and not many people who are part of the Roll Tide want to believe that. But hey, it happened. So yeah, Nick Saban, coach at Ohio State, very interesting. But of course, he's still going to be involved in football somehow. Excited to see what's next for him because coaches have a life too. There's life after football for coaches as well, just as he's been saying. So he has to figure that out. But I'm sure he's at peace with the decision that he made. So moving on to the next topic. I mean, Coach Jim Harbaugh, right? Is he going to go to the NFL? I mean, we knew before the championship game that there were rumors and speculation about him going to the NFL. Obviously, his older brother is doing very well right now in the NFL. So it runs in his blood, and I think that this would be a good time for him to go to the NFL. Now, I know that it took him years to get this national championship for Michigan, but he didn't want to leave without it, right? What has he been saying? That he can now sit at the adult table. He's not at the kiddie table anymore. He can hold his head up to his brother and his father and things of that nature. Um, but I don't know. There's a part of me that still thinks that he may just still want to stay. And then like all of this speculation for what? For nothing, right? So I think when it comes to this decision, I think his father and his brother are going to be very instrumental in helping him make this decision. Um, I don't think it's really going to matter about the money aspect of it. It's really just about the organization and the team and how he feels as far as the connection goes. So it took Jim Harbaugh 25 years to win this national championship, right? Who's to say that he doesn't want to win another one? Um, you know, but with everything going on, he's initially turned down the Panthers. Okay. So I don't think he's going to go to the Panthers. My question to Jim Harbaugh in the press conference, he answered the question in a way where he was just talking about, he wanted to focus on the game and the present tense, right? He doesn't want to focus too much on the future decisions and stuff like that. Really just wanted to take in the moment of the championship game, right? And playing their hearts out to win it. So they won it. They took it home. And now he does have to focus back on that question, right? So I don't know. He coached in the NFL in 2014, I believe. And
yeah, he actually faced his brother in the Super Bowl and lost to him.
see,
So
and um, that's gonna be another goal to check off his list, right? The check for the the on his list for the national championship, that's been check marked and that's done. So he's able to check that off and move on to the next goal that he wants to accomplish, which I'm sure it does have something to do with the NFL. I mean, you have a brother who's doing really well in the NFL right now. Okay. And I think that now that he's at this adult table, is what he calls it, I think that this is his chance to go ahead and ride off into the sunset on this high that he's on right now, and all the support that he has. Now, I don't think that he'll be under pressure. He's coached in the NFL before. So let's just break down So I know that some of the top contenders for NFL coaching positions with Jim Harbaugh are the Chargers, Commanders, the Raiders, and the Panthers, I guess still, and then the Falcons. At least those are your top teams. Those are the top options for him when it comes to DraftKings, when it comes to sports betting, on analysts. Those are the teams that we're going with. Now, I don't know where I can see him. I just see him taking some time to make the decision. Okay. You have to understand college football, the investigation has nothing to do with the NFL. They're two separate entities. Okay. So even though there's an investigation going on with Michigan still, um, the penalties haven't been declared yet, nothing has been sanctioned yet. All of that is still in the works. Okay. And then at the same time, he has to make a decision on what team he's going to choose to go to the NFL. So much speculation. I mean, where do we start, Paris? Where do we start? Because with the investigation going on, it's kind of like they're not trying to focus on it. They just kind of want to skip over it and just get him in
Yeah.
the NFL. That's what I'm sensing. And that's not cool. Okay. Michigan still needs to be held accountable. I'm sorry. They really do. I mean, kudos to them for finally winning a championship. On this team, you really have some great talent. I mean, I am all for Blake Corum. I see him going places. He's a great player. Um, Donovan Edwards. I mean, he had a great team this year. He really did. Not to say that he hasn't had some great players in the past, but this team was able, team 144 was special and they were able to execute. So, I mean, when it comes to Harbaugh and the NFL thing with him being a head coach, somebody who's really in his corner is Colin Kaepernick. Colin is really in his corner, and they have this relationship that they built years ago. Okay, so he feels that he's the best coach ever,
Who
ever. And I mean,
said that?
Colin, Colin Kaepernick said that. He spent
Colin
four.
Kaepernick is. Never mind.
Go ahead. What about Colin?
He
Maybe
says,
I know, but maybe like this is their chance to reunite, right? They spent it looks like 4 years together. Um,
well, Colin Kaepernick going back to the NFL is a much different case than Jim Harbaugh going back to the NFL.
right.
So, in terms of a reunion, I'm not going to speak on that because I don't even believe that will happen, and I'm not saying that.
They can't,
I you
but
know I believe Stephen A. Smith said it best. Honestly, of course, I wish Colin Kaepernick the best. If he does perhaps one day land back in the NFL. But in terms of a reunion with Jim Harbaugh, I wouldn't count on it. I
mm-hmm,
would count on Jim Harbaugh going to the NFL. I do believe it does look like a beautiful option for him this offseason.
mm-hmm,
I think it's important to note that Michigan did give him a contract, but it does have a clause in which if he signs the contract, he can't take any head coaching positions for a year. That's
mm-hmm,
instrumental because if he doesn't take a coaching position now, who knows when that coaching position will be made
mm-hmm,
available. It does look like that right now the NFL is hot when it comes to teams needing new hires, and they need them now. A lot of coaches and the NFL are being let go, which means that there are a lot of vacancies that are
mm-hmm,
open, and they're not going to be open in the following year.
mm-hmm.
So that's another important factor to look at. Is Jim going to want to wait another 5 years, possibly, to coach in the NFL? I don't think so,
Right.
because 5 years isn't promised. Additionally, Michigan will have to face whatever sanctions the NCAA throws at them. Many people are talking about the science ceiling, but I think many also forgot about the recruiting violations during the COVID debt period, which the NCAA has still yet to sanction Michigan for. So, with that being said, Michigan will have they have to have some sort of a hefty fine when it comes to the violations that they committed in terms of the science ceiling, and then before that, the recruiting violations. Um, no one knows how in depth those violations will be. But I will say they do need to be somewhat as strong as Florida State's current violations that they were sanctioned, which we will get into in a bit.
Mhm.
But Michigan does have some stuff that um, they're gonna have to face some sort of hefty disciplinary actions soon.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and I think that what's happening right now is that they're just letting them soak in this glory moment, right? It's been over 20 years since they finally won a championship, okay? Um, Now, the NCAA president saying that they won this fair and square, I don't know about that, okay?
like the championship game in itself,
Yes,
yes,
yeah,
but getting there,
yeah,
that's where the issue is at hand.
right,
Because the sign stealing didn't involve teams within the Pac-12 or the SEC. It
right,
involved the competition within the
right.
Big Ten. And truthfully speaking, we all know that that turnaround was a little too quick for Michigan to have dominated like this
Yeah,
overnight, the Big Ten competition. And I'm not saying that the Big Ten is the greatest competition, but I am saying that teams within the Big Ten were Michigan's biggest competitors. And I'm
yeah,
talking teams outside of just Ohio
yeah.
State.
Iowa,
Michigan
Penn
had problems.
State, um,
Michigan had problems with a number of teams
Maryland,
prior to the science stealing scandal. So
yeah.
I mean, no disrespect, but it's the reason why Michigan hasn't won a Big Ten championship in how many years? Let alone being able to advance outside the conference. So
Mm-hmm,
again, when you do take the science stealing situation out of context and look at the years prior, Michigan
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
struggled, and if I'm not mistaken, with the exception of Ohio State, I believe it was Michigan State in 2015 who won the Big Ten championships, and Wisconsin. But Michigan has struggled within the East Division for a long time, up until, ironically, the whole sign stealing investigation came to light.
Right, right. And so, obviously, the science learning thing is a stretch and it's pretty extreme. But at the press conference, Harbaugh said they're innocent. Okay, he's still sticking with the fact that they're innocent. Um, of course, that's going to be the case, right? They're going to say that. They don't want to focus on the cheating scandal, the allegations, and stuff like that because
Right.
they came out on top and they won the championship, right?
Right.
And they were able to overcome the
Right.
adversity and block out the haters. But the facts are the facts, right? Now, the NCAA, I think that it's a little tricky there because it's like they don't really want to release all the information, okay? Um, which we knew that a lot of things are not going to come out until they determine who won the championship. Okay, so now that they
Right.
won, how are they really going to release the information, right? I think that there are details that we don't know about yet that are very crucial and key, and that would I mean, initially, people were thinking that the championship could be vacated, right? Why do you think that was an automatic thought for a lot of people within Buckeye Nation? Number one, that the championship would be vacated. I mean, number one, Ohio State is not in any position right now to really I don't know. They really shouldn't be saying anything. There's a lot of work that needs to be done when it comes to Ryan Day, number one, okay? Hiring and firing of certain coaches and stuff like that. Special teams has been struggling, okay? Um, the play calling has not been good, okay? Ryan Day shouldn't be play calling, point blank, period. A lot of people still want him fired. They want him gone. But who would replace Ryan Day right now? I just think that Ohio State needs to sit back, let the investigation unfold because the truth is going to come out. But it's really about how they're going to get penalized. Is the punishment going to match the crime? Because it really needs to at this point. FSU, I mean, they opened up an investigation just because they didn't get picked and stuff like that. Yeah, yada, yada, yada. But for them to get penalized over something that happened in 2022 with the former Georgia football player, and now like they're getting all these penalties. I mean, it's you pick and they pick and choose what teams they really want to be held accountable. Okay, but I just think that with Harbaugh, it's a little different because it took him so long to get this championship. Do they just want to strip it away from them? I don't see that happening. I don't see them
But
vacating it.
don't
But
think the NCAA. I don't think the NCAA really cares about how long it took them to get to win the championship.
mhm.
I mean, it could have taken them 100 years. If you broke the rule, you broke the rule. I think it's more so a matter of what consequence kind of. I think it really goes with what level of violation deserves certain level of punishments.
Right,
Because there were a number of people outside of Ohio State who were believing that Michigan national title, if they win, would be vacant. There were people in Washington who felt it should be. There were Alabama fans. There were Michigan State fans. You know, you had people in Iowa and Purdue. So it wasn't just an Ohio State thing that I think people were questioning if the national title were going to be vacant, but I think it was a national thing because I think many teams were frustrated.
hmm
Um, that Michigan went that far. I mean, again, Michigan didn't beat Ohio State in the Rose Bowl. They beat Alabama in the Rose Bowl, and
right,
Alabama fans weren't happy not because they lost, but more so because they felt like Michigan didn't deserve to be there with all of the allegations. Most, if not all, were proven to be true. Additionally, you had Washington fans,
right,
who were not happy. Back when I was at Media Day that Saturday, there were Washington fans who were not happy that Michigan and Jim Harbaugh were there. So it really was a national outrage, and it is going to be a little interesting to see what the NCAA does in terms of their case. No matter what the president says, he's not on the fraction committee, the disciplinary committee. So again, I mean, it possibly could be vacate, but I think in the spring we're gonna find out more information, and it's gonna be interesting to see what happens within the program because there were many violations that Michigan violated, and I understand that people will try and say that everyone cheats and it's not anything new, but to the extent and the amount of violations that were committed, it's over excessive. It's just over excessive, And I mean, at the end of the day, if you follow the rules, you wouldn't be put in situations like this, you know.
hmm
So
right. So I mean, if Harbaugh doesn't go to the NFL, right? Um, I don't know. I just think Michigan would be super happy. Obviously, it would be something that's just stuck. It's just based off tradition. Um, I think that, it'll be, I don't know, like if he stays, he's going to have to deal with a lot of the consequences from the investigation, obviously, right? They're going to hold him accountable. I'm sure for him, it would suck if, the championship got vacated because as they said, they've been putting in the work all these years. But that's just hard to just go alone standing on that because of the allegations and then the video footage and then all of the evidence that we've seen so far. Some of the evidence we haven't seen, guys. I'm telling you, they're going to come out with more. Okay.
yeah.
And it's going to be like jaw dropping in a way. It may not be jaw dropping to me or you, but I just think that just give it a little bit more time for the true evidence to be revealed. Right now, they're just letting them soak in this glory moment, and they're on a high, and um, they are supposedly the best football team in college football right now.
And before we move on, I think that's just what frustrates me the most is that you had all this evidence. If you're going to vacate it and do anything of that sort, why did you let Michigan go this
Right.
far? Because you cheated the whole nation at this point,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's not even about giving Washington the title because they played the national championship game. But had Michigan not even been in the running for the national title,
hmm
I mean, it could have been a whole different,
Yeah.
it could have been a whole because you got to think Michigan was the number one seed, Washington was the number two seed. But had Michigan not been there, that could have made possibly Washington jump up to the number one spot, and they could have potentially had to face a team like Florida State or like Georgia. And,
Right.
and do
Right.
you think Washington would have beat
No.
Georgia? So moving on. So moving on.
Yeah.
So again, that's just what frustrates me is that if they do vacate the title, you really cheated the whole nation. But moving on.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's keep it real here.
And speaking
So
about
go ahead.
speaking about penalization and the NCAA, they penalized Florida State for a recruiting violation, as you said. I'm not going to go too deep within the situation, but I will give a little rundown for those who are confused like myself.
Hmm.
Florida State was sanctioned by the NCAA related to the recruitment of Amarius Mims, the former Georgia lineman who has now declared for the NFL draft. He entered the transfer portal on April 10th, 2022. He took a recruiting visit to Florida State 4 days later, and it is believed that during the event, Florida State offered a deal to the guy for $15,000 per month his first year with the program, and I believe they took him on an inappropriate car ride.
Hmm.
Him and his family, which they are not allowed to do.
Right.
So that was the whole inappropriate part. They gave him a ride somewhere, and I guess according to the NCAA, you're not allowed to do that with recruits. But on Thursday, the NCAA confirmed with Florida State the penalties, which includes a two year probation of recruiting, scholarship reduction of 5% over the next 2 years, a reduction by 7% in official recruiting visits for next year, prohibition on communication with athletes in the transfer portal, a reduction by 18 evaluation days this spring, and a financial penalty of 1% of the athletic department's budget.
Hmm.
So if this is what Florida State is being penalized with and for, then I can only imagine what they're going to do with Michigan. And that's why I said Michigan has to face some sort of a heftier fine than
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
Because because they have a recruiting violation additionally, like Florida State, but then they also have the science stealing scandal. So
Hmm.
someone's gonna have to have a showing clause, period, point blank. And I
Yeah.
think it's gonna have to, without a doubt, be Jim Harbaugh, who was the head coach, which is why I also think he's gonna up and leave Michigan. But I mean, I just I really don't have anything else to say. But I also want to say I find it a little interesting how this violation happened in 2022, and
Hmm.
here it is 2023, and they have already come up with other sanctions for Florida State.
I feel like it's
Addition,
almost like they already had them and they just released them. That's the thing with the NCAA. They already know the details, okay? They have the evidence. They really do.
but then it
They
makes
just
me question what's taking so long with Michigan's 2020 violations. Here
right.
it's 4 years later, and they still haven't given Michigan any sanctions. So that's just what I find interesting is that in a year you were able to discipline Florida State, but within 4 years you're not able to discipline Michigan.
Right. And I know that Michigan was trying to destroy evidence too, before they really got deep into investigating and stuff like that and digging through all the archives and stuff like that. So we there was just an issue with like Michigan and Alabama players not being able to allow to watch the film and things of that nature. There's like really a lot of things that are connected that really show that Michigan is at fault and the wrong in this situation. But it's just that like they're not being held accountable like FSU is right now. The thing is FSU just opened their investigation. I mean, it's very fresh still, and so here we are with the sanctions and the penalties already listed, and then Michigan's investigation opened. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. It just lets you know that certain schools are held accountable in different ways and up to a different standard. So it's crazy because, like you said, the NCAA president, Charlie Baker, he's not a part of the, what did you call it?
Is that a part of the distinction committee?
Right, he's not a part of that
Just
committee. But of course, he does have a say so. So let's read what he said about Michigan, because he is the one that says that they won fair and square as far as the national championship game. I mean, yeah, I'm sure. I don't know if anybody was. I mean, that house was, it was full of Michigan fans, obviously, and nobody, I don't think, on the sidelines, maybe a reporter like ourselves, are out there looking to see if there's any type of cheating going on. What was more of the energy and the vibe in the stadium is just the fact that Michigan is here and let's just win this game. That was pretty much it. Nobody was really focused on the cheating. I spoke with some of the fans after the game about the cheating scandal, and they had a few things to say, but I mean, that just wasn't the focus, unfortunately. So this is what Charlie Baker said, and he said, "I don't regret." Well, this is what he said, his approach to the Michigan sign stealing investigation. And he believes that exposing the scheme legitimized the Wolverines. He actually thinks that it legitimized the Wolverines' national championship victory on Monday. So he thinks that, like, yeah, we said that already, kind of, Paris, like in the episode, that it was going to give them fuel, in the game. It's going to motivate them to really just go hard in the paint and win this game on the field. So the quote says this: "I don't regret doing it because sitting on that information," which I just want to let you know, as I just said, they sit on information. Okay. They sit on evidence. Then they wait to reveal it and expose it after certain things. Okay. Like, hint, hint, like Michigan winning the championship. We're going to see what's going to be revealed soon. But this is what he said: "I don't regret doing it because sitting on that information, giving the comprehensiveness of it, I think we would have put everyone, including Michigan, in an awful place." They were already in an awful place. Um, the biggest accomplishment with Michigan is them beating Ohio State every year. I mean, that's the goal for Michigan. So for them to do it 3 years in a row, that's a big thing. So anyways, so Baker told a small group of reporters from the NCAA convention that as it was out in the public domain and people either made adjustments or didn't. At the end of the day, no one believes at this point that Michigan didn't win the national title fair and square. Hmm. People beg to differ, Baker. I just, he should know that. He knows that, and it's just this unfairness when it comes to certain schools and being held accountable for their mistakes, okay? Especially when it comes to recruiting and when it comes to cheating and sign stealing and things of that nature. I mean, if this was any other school, I don't know, I feel like we would know all of the details and we would have already known about the sanctions and the penalties that they are going to have to deal with. But yeah, but like when it comes, it's just because of them making it to the national championship. That is why. Um, so yeah, he said that his decision, he admits it was unusual, but he believes the result brought more integrity to Michigan's run in the college football playoff. I don't know about integrity. How do you tie in integrity, okay,
with
with
cheating.
cheating? Okay, they don't go together. Make it make sense. It just doesn't. Um, so, so yeah, Michigan faced a lot of adversity. We talked about this. They were able to block it out. I'm surprised it didn't affect their performance a little bit more when they played Alabama and stuff like that. And I mean, the last time Michigan beat Alabama was in 1999. So if Saban wants to leave, I get it. I get it. I get it. Okay, maybe he sees right through the bullshit because we still do. A lot of people still do. Um, Not saying that that was part of the reason why he left, but everything is changing.
Right.
This should let you know that things are changing, not necessarily for the better when it comes to this expansion, when it comes to the coaching, when it comes to the players, when it comes to the recruiting, everything is just changing. And it's not necessarily for the better. You see how things are kind of falling into shits. Okay. And certain teams are not being held accountable. And it's crazy that, um, yeah, Harbaugh, it would be best for him to leave to go to the NFL unless he wants to still deal with all of the consequences and all of the stuff that is going to come with this investigation. So it's I think that we're going to see more things that are going to be exposed about Michigan. So you guys should just stay tuned to see. Um, let's see if the championship is going to stick. I personally don't think that they're gonna vacate it. I just think with like based on that, excuse me, based on that quote from the president, it's like they're favoring Michigan. There's a favoritism here
Mm-hmm.
somehow. I'm not sure where it came from, but there's a favoritism here, and it's Michigan. So moving on, let's get into ESPN. Okay, we were there. We met plenty of ESPN reporters, analysts, including Desmond Howard. Um, we met Jessica Sims. We met uh, Elle Duncan. We met Kennedy Smith. I mean, a lot of people work for ESPN, obviously. But what's crazy is after the championship game, I mean, this is all revealed that they submitted fake names in order to win Emmys for their on-air talent. So ESPN is one of the biggest sports outlets in the world when it comes to media, and they've been apologizing all day. So this has a lot to do with the executives and upper management with ESPN, and I mean a lot of people cheat their way to certain things, right? We saw like not too long ago how Sharissa Thompson was like faking her reports and stuff like that when she was reporting on certain games. And so, I mean, there's a lot of fabrications that happen within our industry. So for ESPN, what happened was, first of all, this is not anything new. This dates back to years. I mean, 10 plus years. Okay. Definitely can even date all the way back to the 90s. Okay. And so what they did was use fake names, right? So they broke the rule called double dipping. That's what they did, right? They have a show, College Game Day show, right? That's a big show. Everybody knows about that show. And so the managers and the executives created a system where in order for them to, if they won an award for College Game Day, right? That award also goes to that award goes to the producers and the production crew and people behind the scenes who make the show a success, right? But when that happens, your on-air talent can't win. You can't win two awards, right? Your on-air talent can win individual awards for them being who they are as a host or analyst, commentator, or whatnot. But when they submit entries and stuff like that for the show or they get nominated or whatnot, ESPN was creating fake names. So they would create, like you have Desmond Howard, for example. He was somebody, for example, right? Instead of putting Desmond Howard, they would put like, you know,
Dirk Howard.
yeah, Dirk Howard, right? So it's same acronyms, right? Same letters used in the fake name, but they submitted a separate name from his, so to make sure that they get the award, right? I can't say that Desmond Howard knew this was happening. What do you think? You think they knew?
I literally was looking up right now this whole time you were talking, and I was trying to configure because what upsets me the most is that it has your name on the Emmy.
Right,
So for you to have these at this point, it wasn't even an upper management. This was a whole team collective.
right.
Because I promise you, I would not ever in my life have an Emmy in, on my shelves and my home that
Mm-hmm.
does not have Paris McGee Jr. up there.
Right. Right. Well, apparently ESPN, they would receive the rewards and then change it to their real names and then give it to them. And it's like, what? What makes you think you can get away with
So
doing
what
that?
I'm
Oh, because you're ESPN.
confused about is they announce the names when the people win.
You're right.
So
They're
my
all
question
in
is,
cahoots.
did all these challenges not go to the Emmys? Because you know they showed up.
Right. Right. It's difficult. I mean, you got Desmond Howard, Sam Ponder, Lee Corso. Lee Corso is a legend, okay, in the sports media world. Okay, like Lee Corso is older than Nick Saban. Okay, he's been around for a long time, and so I'm just saying, like, how many Emmys does Lee Corso have? Okay, he has
Girl, I'm looking at that right now. I gotta
like
look this up because it's for me it's mind blowing. It's mind blowing.
it really is, and you know they're not gonna like stick on it too long because they've already retracted some of the rewards. 37 awards so far have been returned. 37. So, but some of the big names that are included, like Kirk Herbstreit, former Buckeye, okay, Lee Corso, Sam Ponder, Chris Fowler, Tom Rinaldi, and like I said, Desmond Howard, just to name a few. But I mean, 37 awards already. Just imagine how many more, okay? Because they're dating this back to almost the 90s. The 90s. ESPN. Come on now. I mean, Jay Crawford was working with Stephen A. Smith, you know? And I know Jay Crawford. And it's just like there's been so many analysts and reporters who have walked through those doors and, you know, been hosts, on air talent and everything. And I've we've heard a lot of the corruptive things that go on with ESPN. Okay, there's a lot of things that people don't know about, and this was one of them. And it just happened to come to light um, after the
How?
championship game.
Jeez.
It's so weird. It's almost like, you know, sometimes it seems like these things are strategically
Plans,
planned,
right.
yeah, to be leaked. And that just it just lets you know that a lot of people are in cahoots with this, right? So it's going to be interesting to see how many awards total in the end, because I think we're going to reach over 100. Can't just be 37 if we're talking about dating back to the 90s.
At this point, I'm gonna know who individually won the Emmy.
Right, right. Um, but what they were saying, you know, according to News Nation, that the video you sent me, they kept reiterating that, you know, this was upper management and this what these were VPs of ESPN. Old white people, old white men, you know, like just, you know, old. Um, and they were able to create this system to cheat. I don't know what's up
You
with all
know,
this cheating.
Brianna, this isn't making sense though. I'm gonna be straight up from the gate up. This isn't making sense. And the only reason why I asked is because even if it was for VP, what doesn't make sense to me is that when you submit names and people, you know what I'm saying, to companies, everything has to have some sort of background check. How the heck did you? Who's Kirk Henry?
Right. When you run the name,
How,
what comes
where
back?
where have you seen Kirk Henry on television? You haven't because it doesn't. So, but do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
Is that how like if you were ESPN and I was on the Emmy board and I see a submission by ESPN for Dirk Howard. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to look up Dirk Howard.
Right.
So to what point where is the disconnect? That's what I'm trying to understand. Like where how did this go so far over 27 years? Because I was born in 96, so over 27 years. How where did this go to the extreme where you didn't know Dirk Howard wasn't employed for ESPN?
Right.
Kirk Henry.
Right.
Like at this point, it, it's a whole scheme.
It
I
is.
mean, the Emmys were a part of this too, because ain't no way in heck, and we know as producers and editors,
Hmm.
as an editor, ain't no way in heck can something like this happen. I
Right.
wish one of my writers would I wish it would say a Leroy James won the NBA championship. Baby, who is Leroy? And as an
Right.
editor, you think I'm a publisher? Like I don't, Brianna, I don't have anything to say.
I know.
You know,
It
God is
doesn't.
soon to come. That's what I always say. God is soon to come, child.
I know.
God is soon to come.
But what's also interesting is that ESPN, remember, they were recently accused of like releasing other people's news, right? And claiming it as their own, right?
Um, but you know what? Who was that? Brett Mick. What's his name? I gotta look him up now. Brett Mick. He's with Action. I believe he's with the Action Network. He
Hmm.
used to be with ESPN. Brett McMurphy.
Okay.
Brett McMurphy tweeted about ESPN, and he tweeted how they stole his news, his breaking news, and reported it, or they don't credit him as if he was the one who broke the news. What they do is instead they report it as if they were the ones who broke the news, but in reality they weren't. It was Brett McMurphy of the Action Network,
Hmm.
and he not too long ago he tweeted out to ESPN, and they reported about that. Yep.
Yeah. So it's like ESPN is losing. I mean, it's difficult to say that they're just losing credibility, but it just makes you, it's questionable.
Right.
Okay. It's questionable. Not saying that they've lost credibility because it's ESPN. This is people go to them first. Okay. And um I have in the past. Like, you just trust them, right? They're supposed to be credit worthy. But it's now questionable because you have the falsifying of news, okay? And then you have this, right? So now you're submitting fake memes to win Emmys. I mean, when are people really gonna realize that it's important to make sure, one, you have your own. You can't always, yeah, these networks have these huge platforms and they can help you go places, okay? And connect you with people and you be in the loop and stuff like that. But everything is not all what it's cracked out to be, okay? There are certain people who are no longer with ESPN for certain reasons, okay? Um, so there's a lot that goes into this. Obviously, we have representation of people like us on ESPN. Um, but there's also been issues where people feel like they can't be themselves. Okay. Sage Still, for example, right? How long has she been with ESPN? Years. Okay. And she decided to leave. The thing is sometimes, sometimes these reporters and these analysts, they say that they're leaving, but they're given the option to leave before they get fired. That's what really happens quite often, and people don't understand that. So, I mean, you know, ESPN, it's people just need to be careful with what they believe that ESPN says because it's not all credible. You can't just believe every single thing that they say. There's been too much that's happened within 2023 and now. This is the beginning of the year, and you're being accused of lying, and you've been apologetic all day because you submitted fake names to win Emmys. People work hard to win an Emmy. It's not easy to win an Emmy.
No.
So it's like, ESPN. There's a sense of entitlement. That's exactly what it is. So we'll see how many more awards are actually retracted because I think it's going to be closer. It's going to be over 100. I mean, 37, that's nothing. When you're looking at all the
Yeah.
way dating back to the 90s, we're talking
Yeah.
a lot of awards. So we'll
Agree.
see. Maybe
Agree.
we'll see some of the reporters, some of the, Emmy winners come out and really speak the truth about the situation.
I
I know Desmond Howard
would
went.
love to know that.
I would too. I know Desmond Howard went ahead and was speaking about it kind of on the pivot. Haven't watched it yet, but I really want to know
Send that
if the
to me.
yeah, I really want to know if they're really going to like get into real detail because I mean, there is non-disclosure agreements and stuff like that. You know, they can only say so much, and it's just that's the thing with these bigger networks. You can only say so much. You're limited to what you can say or what you can reveal, unless they will come for your ass and blackball you. Okay, so you just got to be careful with these networks. Okay,
Yeah.
why don't you guys just tune into Off the Field because we keep it real. We're gonna really let you know the truth and give you the inside scoop on things, you know. And we can give opinions and our feedback without having to worry about being blackballed or penalized or any of that or something being stripped away from us. So it's just important to really pay attention to your sources because ESPN is tripping lately. They are not as they're credible, but it's questionable now. You should question it. Definitely question it. So one one thing I want to touch on is that some history was made today with the Patriots, right? So Bill Belichick is also a legendary coach that's leaving. Bye bye. No longer with the Patriots. Oh my gosh. I mean, that was like, damn, what's really going on? Bill Belichick is leaving. Nick Saban is leaving. Uh, Pete Carroll is leaving. I mean, there's a lot going on, right? So
Mhm.
with Bill Belichick leaving, it's crazy because they decided to replace Bill Belichick with a black coach. This is historical for the Patriots franchise because they've never had a black head coach ever. So, an ongoing issue what we've been talking about throughout this season on Off the Field is that the NFL needs to have more black head coaches, right? We make up like 90% of the NFL. And so why wouldn't your head coaches kind of match, you know, your roster, you know, people who look like us, like make it make sense. You want to take away, you want to kind of you want to steer away from that stereotype that the NFL is like this slave plantation systematic racist system, right? Like some people still feel that way till this day. There was supposed to be a documentary produced by Jamel Hill and I forget uh, um, professor from I believe at HBCU. They were supposed to produce a documentary about racism in the NFL and things of that nature. That never got released. Supposed to be released with ESPN. That never got released last year. I don't know if that's going to get released this year, but it didn't happen. Sometimes that's another reason why they don't let these things happen because they don't want to reveal too much and in a way tell themselves. But you know what? Things that happen in the dark are coming to light when it comes to ESPN. But anyways, the coach who was hired for the Patriots is Gerard Mayo. So congratulations to him for being the first black NFL coach for the Patriots franchise and Patriots franchise history. That's really big. He's a young coach. He is the youngest coach in the NFL as well. He is a Super Bowl champ as well. He played for the Patriots, and he was a first round draft pick in 2008 for the Patriots. So it's not every day that this happens. Okay, the Patriots is like the most patriotic team in the NFL. I mean, I never would have thought that they would have gone ahead and hired a black coach. I think that they want to be seen in a different light than what's been painted, right, with Bill Belichick over the years. Of course, racism has come up in that franchise plenty of times. Um, and then, you know, the NFL has been under scrutiny for a couple years now for racist hiring practices when it comes to black coaches and things of that nature. So I think that them making this move is um, is in connection to that, right? They're trying to change the narrative a little bit. So I think that's important that they hired this coach. He was already a part of the Patriots family. He was already on the coaching staff, I believe, like as a lineman coach or something like that, defensive lineman coach, but or offensive lineman coach. But I think that it's exciting to see more head coaches, more black head coaches in the NFL. I mean, we have some Mike Tomlin doesn't get enough credit for as long as he's been a successful NFL head coach. for the Steelers. So Mike Tomlin, I mean, you got to give him his props, and he's getting his flowers now. But you also have other coaches like the Houston Texas coaches. Hit that coach. What's his name? DeMarco. I forget his name, but he's doing a great job with the Houston Texans, and I think that we're going to see more and more. Obviously, the Las Vegas Raiders are like number one when it comes to having the black crew, a part of the NFL, the GM, president, all of that, women, they're doing it. They're really trying to make the change, and I think that other teams are following suit right now, and the Patriots is one of those teams that is starting to pick up the pace with that. So you never know with the Seattle Seahawks. We may see another black coach, but I just think that the more black head coaches that we see in the NFL, the better. Okay, I think that this is going to make the players feel a lot better in a sense, right? I think that it's going to bring us a level of comfort, okay? And it's going to bring this level of security in a sense because it's almost like they're finally listening um, to what we've been saying for some time. But, there are still going to be some changes that need to be made. Like, for instance, we haven't heard too much of an update on the Brian Flores case, you know? And that's another investigation that they're keeping that very, very quiet. And I think that hiring more black head coaches is something that strategic in a sense to where that's going to take away the negative connotation attached to that lawsuit there. Okay. That's going to make up for the lack of, that's going to make up for the racism that some coach, that Brian Flores felt, right? Like if they hire more black head coaches with other teams, it's going to take away that negative light, that negative attention with the Brian Flores case when it comes to, discriminatory hiring practices in the NFL. So there's strategies to this, guys. Like it's not just because the NFL knows what they're doing. Okay, they know what they're doing, but it's super exciting to see because unfortunately it did take this long for the Patriots to get a black head coach. It did. It did, and it's going to take even longer for some other teams. It depends on the owners. It has a lot to do with the owners, um, and
I also think too it has a lot to do with the success of the team. The Patriots, he's been the head coach of the Patriots for I'm talking years.
yeah,
I'm talking over 30 years. And with the success that he had, I mean, there was really no need to boot him out
hmm
of that coaching position. And when the time came, they did it. But I mean, 10 years ago, he was still
right,
rocking, So I think some of this almost ties into how a player does. There's no need to trade your quarterback if he's bringing you Super Bowls every
right,
year. You know what I mean?
hmm
And I think that has kind of been not one of the issues. Um, Not a main one, but that has been one of the issues in a sense of when you do have a head coach that it really is leading your team, you don't want him to move. And of course, every year is going to be perfect. Look at Tomlin. This season hasn't been his best season, but are they going to get rid of him? No. They
right,
just got to make those roster changes to deliver because he's been with the Pittsburgh Steelers for as long as I remember.
right,
I
right,
remember being little boys seeing him with them. So I think another thing too is when coaches really do find that fit with that franchise team, it's almost like that quarterback. You stay there until it's time to move on to something else outside of football.
right. And I mean, it was just like in 2020, there were like only three black head coaches in the NFL. I mean, we're making progress slowly, guys. Like, this is all within recent times, you know. Unfortunately, it took this long. That lets you know that there is somewhat still of a messed up mentality when it comes to letting us be in authoritative, powerful positions on these NFL teams. Even though the minorities make up majority of the teams in the NFL. Um, but then there are a lot of us behind the scenes and operations and things of that nature. So can't overlook those people. But now we're just starting to see more of us in the limelight. I mean, I'm talking about in the officiating crew. Um, and we're seeing more Black women as well have a lot of say so in making changes. So, it's good that we're in these positions so we can make certain changes within the NFL, that we can address those issues and not just talk about them. And you have to keep talking about it, and you have to keep bringing it up in order to enforce change. So that wraps up our episode. I mean, we touched on a lot of topics today, and there's a lot of moving parts going on right now too. So there's definitely going to be more things that we talk about on the next episode on Monday. But I just want to thank you guys for tuning in. This has been, none the least, we don't know if Harbaugh is really going to leave for the NFL yet. We don't truly know. What we do know is the coach who has been replaced, when it comes to Nick Saban, we don't know how that's going to turn out, but we know that he is there to stay and that he's excited for that, obviously. And then the NCAA, I mean, there is an investigation that's still ongoing. So hopefully we're going to get some updates on that in the next few months. But Paris feels like, we won't really learn too much about that until the spring. So April is when we'll hear something. I honestly don't think that the punishment is going to match the crime, but I hope it does. I hope it does, because if it doesn't, that's going to be a problem. That's going to be a problem. So just let the investigations keep rolling. Keep opening in the investigations. I mean, it needs to be investigated. Some of this shit is so corrupt. People just have no idea. So thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you guys subscribe to Off the Field on YouTube, TikTok, on Instagram, on Facebook. We are on Twitter, so you can go ahead and look us up. But I'm just not huge on Twitter. I'm not a huge Twitter person, but we are on there. So thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you guys tune in on Monday. We will be talking about some more stuff. And then, congratulations to Off the Field for making its debut at the 2024 National Championship game. That was really big, thanks to Paris. So, that's it, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we will see you guys on Monday. Have a good weekend. Bye.